Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Thursday, April 24th edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, Teddy Panos, coming here from the WellPoint Studios here in beautiful, historic downtown Lowell, and it certainly is a beautiful day here on this Thursday. Even bigger day for me, because I've been trying to get this guy in for forget the Daily Pulse, for any Inside Lowell podcast, and he finally... You finally said yes.
You know, baseball, softball is here. It's make sure the kids get promoted. You got me. You got me in to promote everybody.
We did. The he in question is none other than Lowell's own Matt LeLacheur. You may recall him as a former Lowell City Council candidate back in the day, the initial victim of the Panos bump when I endorsed your
Yes, Teddy, I've been thanking you every day ever since. My wife thanks you every day.
You know, you probably, in retrospect, you probably should thank me for the Panos bump. But hey, it's good to have you here. We have a lot to talk about. You reached out, you said, all right, I think you've discussed enough recently between Cawley Stadium and baseball and softball and AAU and Lowell High School construction disaster. I'll give you a chance to pat yourself on the back. But also, for folks who don't know, your economic development is really kind of your sweet spot, and you're involved in a lot of businesses, and you know a thing or two about it. So I'm actually going to pitch you. I'm going to promote you for a job here, which should automatically disqualify you.
Yeah, I'm out. Perfect.
Once
Hopefully I don't want
your name for that job. But we'll get right to our discussion with Matt LeLacheur. First, let's thank our Daily Pulse sponsors, Ray Booten. You know by now he's a licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. You know by now he's a certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you are looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, Ray Booten is your man. And you can find him online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point, and they are the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. Today being April 24th, you have till May 1st, exactly 1 week from today, is the deadline to change your plan if you are insured under the Massachusetts GIC. So if you're not happy with your current insurer, or even if you are, let's take a look at WellPoint. There's probably a plan there for you, and the best part about them, they do not require any doctor referrals or primary care physicians. So very rare in that field. Check them out, WellPoint. They are the leader in Massachusetts GIC coverage. All right, Matt LeLacheur is here. I don't want to rain on your parade, pardon the pun. But this Saturday is the Lowell Youth Baseball annual and softball annual parade, which marches through the downtown streets a little bit over to City Hall to kick off the season. And Mother Nature looks a little bit threatening. So,
well, I'll give you a pet peeve of yours actually threatened and changed this on us to begin with, because the loving organization that absolutely loves Lowell, the Boston Fleet, have a game at 2:00 on Saturday. So we had to move, and we were going to be out at Shed Park because we were not going to be able to have.
Oh, you weren't going to have it in downtown.
Yeah, we were going to have to move to make room for the organization that has worked so hard to ingratiate itself.
Why don't we just move them to Agganis Arena on Saturday, because that's where they want to be anyway.
Maybe we go march down in Boston and we can switch, and trade things off.
So as of now, the parade is still on, right?
As of now, still on. We're hoping. Fingers crossed. We're looking for. I've seen previous editions of the Pulse. We're hoping for the God's country, or whatever the phrase was that they had in the council. Hoping God to step in and let the rain go away. But we'll have to make a call probably by the end of the day today or tomorrow. And if we have to, it's the kids won't get the chance to be behind the fire trucks and the other things, but we'll make sure they have a great experience.
Right. So if the event does take place, though, what's the schedule for Saturday?
Yeah, the schedule is everybody would arrive at 2:00 over in Shed Park. We're going to line everybody up on the Shed Upper area with the kids, and then march them down Knapp Ave, which comes down past the cemetery, coming back to Rogers Street. Down Rogers Street, along the track of past the pavilion, along the track, and down to home plate of the Senior League field. We'll do the pomp and circumstance, make sure all the 4 council candidates in Belvedere have a chance to speak.
There's a fifth out there that you may or may not want to speak.
All right. Better check my phone after that.
He hasn't pulled his paperwork yet, but he's all over Inside Lowell with commentary.
All right. And so, the mayor and others, will have a chance just to kind of welcome the kids like every year. It's always a wonderful chance to have all of the families from across the city of Lowell, now that we've gone to a citywide environment, it's really been unbelievable. I think long term, it is going to have such a positive effect on the city. A lot of that whole my neighborhood against your neighborhood thing has washed away. It's now us against Chelmsford, us against Westford, us against Andover. And it's really, really great to see. And so that should be a lot of fun. And after they're done, we're going to feed everybody over by the tennis courts and the lower field.
Cool. So, yeah, it's nice to see. And this, when did they kind of start with? Is this the third or fourth year now?
Third year.
Third year.
Yeah.
You know, trying to revive baseball, which has been such a great spring and summer tradition. And I know, you know, the Callery Park versus Shed Park, and, you know, you work in McPherson's. And it was such a cool thing. And it kind of kept these kids in the system. And then, as kind of played out spectacularly at the Board of Parks meeting a week and a half ago, this AAU monster jumped in.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, you're children's star at some level of this.
They'll
right?
be proud to be called stars. Yeah, they're good little players.
Wait, before we get too far into it, your daughter was playing with the boys. Your daughter was playing Boomer baseball, not Boomer softball.
She was.
But this year she's finally getting the transfer over.
She made the transfer over. Yeah. Shout out to my little Emily, who had her birthday yesterday. Now 11 years old. She was the last girl playing with the boys all the way through, won a state title 2 years ago.
Her name kept getting mentioned every week in my weekly Boomer baseball recaps for something she did great out there on the field. So she wasn't just on the team. She was a key part of that.
She hung right in with those guys. It was great to see, contributed throughout the whole process. I think what's happened is the Boomer softball side is a little bit younger in the process, and we're trying to make sure the girls can develop the exact same culture as what we've been very successful to do on the boys side. And it just made sense that my daughter was part of the group of people that is going to try to plant the flag and grow the softball side to the same type of success that we've been able to have on the baseball side. So it's been great. Wonderful transition.
So talk a little bit about this dynamic of the local teams, the park leagues in baseball, or the local schools in basketball or other sports versus this AAU, which seems to be dominating everything. And I'm now kind of immersed in at the age of 7 and now 8 with my son.
Yeah.
But I'm literally on Sudbury at 8 a.m. this Saturday morning.
It's unbelievable.
Look, God, please.
You mean East Bridgewater this past Sunday at 8 in the morning wasn't somewhere I was supposed to be? Yeah. It's
Taunton on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's another fun one. Because there aren't enough basketball courts, apparently, to have Lowell play versus Chelmsford in basketball as well as baseball, right?
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole separate, conversation just on this subject. And in my opinion, I think opinions of a lot of parents. It's interesting what's happened. Take the step back to when Lowell merged on the rec side of everything. I do think that I saw Councilor Robinson having a conversation on this. I do think going away from neighborhood schooling started a process that turned us into having more difficulty at the certain park levels. When these kids aren't all going to school together, they don't necessarily all stay in the same neighborhood and play in the same park. So certain parts of the city were struggling with that. I also think that just natural progression of how Lowell's an immigrant city and different immigrant groups have come in, baseball isn't necessarily what those immigrant groups would play. But there is a large Hispanic population. We're just not getting enough of the Hispanic population playing baseball, something we're all trying desperately to fix. But that all coming together has been great. It's stabilized and actually grown, and really the softball side is growing faster than the baseball side, which is great to see.
Yeah, the girls sports seem to be absolutely exploding, between what happened with USA Soccer, to some degree basketball, but the WNBA and whatnot. But now softball hasn't caught that same fire yet. But, I feel like if the rest of the world kind of catches up and becomes competitive, it'll happen here in
they have
USA too.
At the younger ages, what's happened is similar to what you were talking about. We haven't had, I'll call it the infection of believing that you have to play this AAU style of ball in order to have your son or daughter be good at 9 or 11. And as someone who's been in it now, and I definitely, we can talk specifically about what we've tried to do in Lowell to combat this with the Boomer baseball and softball program. But as you witness it and you watch what's happened, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Billions of dollars, where you'll see, if you've got Instagram or you've got any of the social media accounts, you'll see all the jokes. The comedians now, it's a hit line for everybody of our generation because we're all living it. We're watching our 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and 10-year-olds be asked to go compete at the highest levels, right? So that they can get to college and star for Duke in basketball or Vanderbilt in baseball or pick your sport, whatever it may be, Oklahoma in softball. Right? The reality is, getting back to the rec side, which I have my deep passion on, as many kids playing for as long as possible is the goal of what we should be trying to do. Because to be a great athlete, it isn't what you're going to do between the lines in any of these games. It's going to be what you do when you go home, when you're throwing the ball against a garage, when you're shooting hoops down at the neighborhood park or kicking a soccer ball. And so if we've so overscheduled these kids to the point where they don't even want to go home and do this stuff on their own, you're going to have a detrimental effect to the long-term outcome that you believe your $4,000 a year is going to get you.
You're preaching to the choir, as I'm discovering. And there's been a lot of big-time college basketball coaches as well. On the women's side, Gino Auriemma, I think, mentioned, because they used to go from practicing 3-4 days a week and playing a game or two to now practicing once a week and playing 6, 7, 8 games. You're beating up their bodies. You're beating up their psyche to some degree. It's interesting to hear you say this, because you're kind of coming from the same place I'm coming from, and yet here we are, both of us with our kids in some level of AAU sports and tournaments. Are we going back to the good old days? I was disheartened to hear Counselor Robinson say that even if Lowell tried to prioritize Lowell leagues and Lowell kids to play and rent their parks, probably isn't enough demand for it because they're all playing AAU anyway.
Yeah, as someone who's heavily involved in the way we permit everything, some of that's true and some of that isn't. Having gone citywide, what we've now been able to do is kind of prioritize 4 or 5 parks all around the city, which has left some parks available for options like AAU for the city to generate revenue and do other things. And I think we've gotten really good lately, and I think by next year we'll really have it honed in so that all these conversations that are happening at the Board of Parks and in other places will allow both to exist. But in order for both to exist, what we did here in Lowell, and all the credit in the world to the _Cation family, Brian started the process and Brendan really took it and ran with it and created the Boomer program, the Boomer baseball and softball program. And so much like you said, there's a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses that you almost feel like you have to do if you're going to be, in this environment.
That's where I am now.
It is. And I get it. And so in order to try to do that in a way that was going to allow for the families that truly wanted it in Lowell to be able to have it, we had to come up with a more affordable option and something that would provide as strong a competition as everybody else. We're playing in all the same leagues against all the same teams, but we're trying to do it in a way that is less cost prohibitive, and even scholarships and other things are provided. And so what we hope, and what I think hopefully the proof is in the pudding, what we've done is we've created the spring season for a lot of these, and then for softball in through to the summer. I won't call it developmental, but it's meant for the kids to understand and learn how to compete at the highest levels. But it's not necessarily designed for you to believe at 8 years old or 9 years old that you're committed to LSU next year. And it's for those programs, it's really unfortunate that people are being sold a bill of goods like that. So instead, what we're focused on is getting them the highest competition possible so that when we switch back over into the summer, or we switch back over into the season when we're playing Lowell against Westford, Lowell against Marlboro, Lowell against Middletown, Connecticut, or wherever it may be, when we start getting into districts, states, and regionals, our kids have had the advantage of being together because the Boomer program is 95%, almost 100% Lowell kids. And so they've been together, they've learned together, they've competed together, and it's led to 3 straight state championships on the baseball side. And I think softball's coming right behind it.
Yeah. And okay, so that's actually heartening to hear that because we're fortunate in Lowell to have enough baseball fields where you can keep the kids. You host the tournaments in Lowell as opposed to having to drive to God-forsaken places like Taunton and Framing or Fitchburg, wherever the hell I was.
East Hartford, we were north of it. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Unfortunately, my son's TTO coach, that's the team he plays for, was lamenting the fact we were in a facility that had maybe 15 to 20 basketball courts. I'm not exaggerating, out in Fitchburg, and he's like, we need one of these somewhere in Lowell so you can keep the kids playing in Lowell, host the tournaments in Lowell as opposed to having to travel everywhere else. But so how does that discussion at the Board of Parks, so how is that going to affect if you go from your organizations, Boomer Baseball and other these other type of leagues and tournaments, renting the park from 150 a day to 1,500 a day. Does that affect your ability to hold these tournaments, or does it just increase the cost for the kids who are going to participate? The parents whose kids are going to participate in it.
I'll give you two things. One, there are people actively looking to try to find a place for an indoor facility here in Boston. Here in Lowell. Yeah. I feel like I'm for the fleet thinking of Boston.
Hamilton Canal.
Yeah, right. So, that hopefully is something that would develop over time. There's a lot of people that are hoping to do that. But to your point, as far as the fields are concerned, the Board of Parks in the city of Lowell should be commended immensely for what they've done to allow this to foster. We, as a nonprofit, as a 501c3, the Lowell Youth Baseball and Softball League, with our Boomer division, because we are united, while two separate 501c3s, it is all funneled through the same operational, structure. We've been able to provide what we've provided because we're not being charged to utilize the fields. And the only reason and the only way that we could continue under this model would be to continue the path of having a 501c3 exemption for groups like us. Now, I know the Board of Parks has no interest in charging the rec leagues, so I don't see that to be a problem.
Right, they can issue exemptions.
Yes.
And that would be but that also would apply, because I was thinking of that, like, oh my God, this now starts to affect, Boomer Baseball, Boomer Softball, and other Lowell organizations.
It does.
Can you be granted these exemptions based on the discussions that you were hearing at that recent Parks meeting?
Based on my conversations, it's definitely something they want to explore. I know we'll be in advocating for it and explaining why it's a unique situation. It's also difficult because because we do it ourselves, call it baseball and softball. Operationally, baseball and softball are very different. Very different. Baseball operates through a model of Little League or Cal Ripken League, which is Babe Ruth, and that's their model inside. Softball is through USA Softball. And what baseball does is they have your spring season going into your summer, you go district states, and off you go. Softball culturally has been far more designed of weekend tournaments through USA Softball and going and playing throughout the weekend, where there isn't that Lowell versus Chelmsford type of environment that gets fostered in softball. So for anybody, as Gil Vision and and his longtime work out there at McPherson will tell you, softball is different. And I think what's happening is the Board of Parks has had to navigate through kind of decoupling the two of those things. And as we do it, I think everybody's now starting to understand that there are definitely ways to make sure the city gets what they deserve, but still ensures that the Lowell kids are getting to compete at the highest levels at the cost.
Sure. And that's the ultimate goal. The city should be compensated because they've got to upkeep these parks, and they're pouring a ton of money into them
to the benefit of us.
But you also, just because the kids, the avenue is more AAU than the old Parks League, if it's still Lowell kids, you've got to make sure that those kids are going to use the fields and are able to access them cost effectively as well.
Yeah, it's key. And you brought up before, one of the key sticking points for a long time has been the bathrooms.
The dreaded bathrooms.
The dreaded bathrooms, specifically at McPherson. And I thought Council Robinson did a very good job of properly framing that Mr. Vision has given 40 plus years of his life to try to make sure that the girls in Lowell and the surrounding area and that community in Centerville are given weekend economic development, positive experience, built that concession stand and is managed and run, and all should be something that should be commended. The problem is, in the end, it's on city property, and when the permit goes out for others to use it, everybody would like the access to be able to use all of it. And in particular, when you're talking about girls' sports, bathrooms is a really nice thing to have. And so for us to not have access over the years to get to those bathrooms so that the girls didn't have to go to Wendy's or, McDonald's or wherever it may be to go to the bathroom.
Or change in the porta potty.
Which is another, a point I want to clarify as we go through because it was mentioned in that meeting. So we've rectified that. We are now, have access to that. We've always, at any of the parks that we're utilizing for Lowell Youth Baseball and Softball, the city has keys to all of it. There's all this discussion about who should clean it, and open to having any discussion on how that would work. I know for us, we take the responsibility of making sure it's clean, that if any was damaged, we would, take the responsibility of cleaning. But clarifying that and making sure, because I know Council Robinson referenced, union considerations and other things like that. Open to any discussion. Just everybody needs to know every time we add a cost, for us as a league, it just gets passed through to the parents for these kids. And so we just need to balance that out and make sure that we're just not making it unaffordable for the kids that really need to be able to do it. And we go get the porta potties. I know it was mentioned in a recent.
So you said you wanted to address porta potties, and whoever doesn't use the bathroom facilities, that it's part of the concession stand or whatever, they have to get porta potties, right?
Yes. I mean, it was incorrectly stated in a council meeting that the city provides porta potties for us. They do not. We pay for those things.
Is the porta potty cheaper than renting? Than if you paid to rent the concession stand, or the bathrooms? So I assume the bathrooms are connected to the concession stands.
They are, yeah. And so it would depend on what fee structure they came up with. But if they were going to look for a custodial fee of $50 or $100 every time we use it, we use them 5 days a week. You know, you can get a porta potty for $150, $200 a month, as opposed to, you know, you'd be at $250 a week if we were going to go to a custodial fee.
Simple economics.
It just wouldn't work. So if we've taken the time to build them, we might as well use them and then just hold people accountable to make sure if something goes wrong, well, you're accountable. But I understand the union side of it, and so it'd be something that, you know, everybody should sit down and have a conversation about. But I just know if you were going to charge us $50 or $100 every single night, economically, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah. We're chatting with Matt LeLacheur, well-known Lowellian, the initial victim of the Panos bump. I just have to keep throwing that out there to you. A man who wears many hats. Not just the one with the L that he's wearing on your screen right now, but as we just talked about, the youth baseball, softball, and all that stuff. He's got a bunch of others, and we're going to talk about all those hats as well. First, let's thank our Daily Pulse sponsors. We mentioned Ray Booten, licensed realtor in Mass and New Hampshire, certified appraiser in both states as well. Find him online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Washington Savings Bank, banking that goes the extra mile. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to Greater Lowell and Southern New Hampshire since 1925. That's a century of service. And also a century of community service. One of these days, I'm going to drag Sheila Mahoney and Joe McNamee in here, among others, to talk a little bit about that component, because that story should be more public than it is. Thank you as well to the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in Greater Lowell through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on since 1982, and by the Massachusetts Pirates. They bring all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City Pirates. Next game this Sunday, April 27th at the Tsonga Center. Keep an eye on InsideLowell.com and Inside Lowell on Facebook and Twitter. Chance for you to win 4 tickets. Get 4 tickets for free to that game on Sunday, or their vouchers so you can use them for any future game as well. All right, back with Matt LeLacheur, the man of many hats. Cawley Stadium renovation. We've had Bill Samaras been joining us on Wednesdays now. We've talked with city councilors about that. Where is that project stand right now? And I'm still not sure what the end goal is here. Are we just going to fix up the facilities, the locker rooms, put a little building in there for training space and coaching space and whatnot? Or are we going to go in for the whole kit and caboodle and renovate that stadium? You are spearheading a committee that's involved with that. A lot of people involved with it, but you're kind of you've become the face of it, for lack of a better term. Where are we on that project, Matt?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'll start with what's been very exciting to see since this all started. We're going on 4 years of kind of navigating through this process. And the current mayor was instrumental in creating it, Mayor Rourke, and Mayor Samaras were very instrumental in starting the process. And to see what we're getting for commitment from the city is very heartening to where we hopefully are looking to end up. There is a sense that you can feel when you start to get involved in the city right now in different projects, that a commitment to excellence, a commitment to it's not good enough. What we've been doing in the past was just good enough. It's time for us to demand more. And this project is a perfect example of how that is starting to play out. When we first tackled this, we put together the city administration through the DPD and private individuals donating their time with architectural renderings and other things, put together a very aggressive plan for what 68 acres of land could look like out there, our largest open space in this city. And what has been unbelievable is there has been zero wavering from executing every step in that plan from the city. Now, it's going to take a lot to get to the finish line, but we've already seen the high school was in desperate need for a second turf field out there in order to provide our students at Lowell High School the same type of competitive environment that you were seeing at most of our surrounding, if not almost all of our surrounding towns. And so that was deemed a priority. We executed it. We got it done. There's no question that right now the current locker room, weight room, training operation out there is just inadequate. It's not where it needs to be. And so that project, fully funded, set to go out and get ourselves a contractor and start the project.
All right. So is this the $11 million project investment or no?
So the first one that we had for Carvalho Field was a little under $2 million to execute that.
And that one's done.
That one's all done.
Ribbon cutting last summer.
Field hockey, soccer, everybody now. Lacrosse will be on it for the spring. That's all done. Everything's been positive, feedback from everybody. There's about a $5 million training facility, locker room facility. That's what's set to break ground late summer, early fall. That's kind of the timeline.
Okay, so it will break in a couple of months. It's breaking ground, and that is fully funded.
Fully funded as we get to, let me say, as long as the council deems that what's been laid out in this next budget is what they think is the best. They've given every indication with unanimous votes as we've gone through the process. So putting the cart slightly before the horse, but assuming that the council deems that what's been put forth by the administration is worthy, then that will go out to bid at some point in the summer, and we should see groundbreaking at some point late summer, early fall.
All right, so we're up to $7 million.
Yeah.
Is that the end of the first phase, and then what are there any other phases coming, or is it now just do you see if you can get to the big project, which is basically the complete rebuild of Cawley Stadium, which I think that number was what, 28 million? Is that the correct number?
Yeah, around the ballpark. Yep, that's what we're looking. So
that's you're once this part is done, this $5 million training facility, you either stop there or shoot for the stars.
There will be no stopping. I can guarantee you that there will be no stopping. That's a
$21 million. Bravo on getting $7 million. How much of that $7 million is city money versus private commitment and fundraising?
So far we've had state earmarks, we've had city money, we've had some private money, but that's not really the dedication of the private money is meant for the bigger project. And so we've had private money start to come in on that side of it. We also have a $3 million federal grant that's specifically for the design and the basically complete layout of what fixing those stands would look like.
Is that still in play?
That's set up.
Even with my friend with the orange hair in the White House?
So far, yes. Congresswoman Trahan was fantastic in helping us get that. We have had
there's a guy who has direct access to Trump's ear from Lowell, Corey Lewandowski. I implore as much as it's a detestable concept, if Lowell can benefit from having a conversation with him.
I was fortunate enough that one of my children, one of his children are of similar ages, and we ended up sitting at a field in Pelham for flag football talking one time. And so, yes, this is what it's going to take, Teddy, to step back. There is one other phase. There's one other phase that is under, and you can see it out there. It's the parking lot, the current parking lot. We can build the most beautiful thing we want out there. If you're still going to drive through the Himalayas to get to everything, it really kind of doesn't work.
Yeah, moms and dads don't like driving their $50,000 to $75,000 BMWs, Mercedes, and Teslas through a...
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to kick the crap out of Andover, North Andover, and Westford, we want to do it in, in a nice environment that lets them go home sad, They don't want to give them a chance to make fun of us. So
that one appears to be, that's reality now, too, based on last Tuesday night or the week before's meeting. I'm losing track of
groundbreaking's already happened.
Good.
What's happening right now is the underground storage tank that's alleviating a problem that's been there for a long time for flooding out there. That is what the reason that has to be done first before the redesign and repavement and everything of the parking lot can be done. So that's a phase that's still moving. And then we get into the the granddaddy of them all. And the granddaddy of them all is currently designed for us to add a couple of additional lanes to the track, which would allow us to be probably one of the only 3 or 4 host sites for MIAA and New England championship events, because we'd be an 8-lane track with a full outlay of other field events and other things. The facade of the stands would remain as we know them. We would back everything up. So you'd look probably at the destruction, back up, everything would appear the same. And then using a more cost-effective route inside the grandstands for us to have probably more of a metal bleachers and other things. So we're not maintaining so much cement.
Right.
But the granddaddy of the whole thing is a field house. It's a 3 to 4 story field house, depending upon what we finalize on. And if you've been to Tewksbury lately, if you've been to some of these other places that have done this, it's unbelievable. It's game changing to be able to have that. And it's not just game changing for the high school students. It's game changing for a community. It's where you can have your Hall of Fame dinners. It's where you can have your rec league meetings. It's where you could have potentially fundraisers and functions and other things along those lines. And so the design of it is meant to be just as much community center as it is athletic center. And that's where we need to get to. And we're going to get there.
All right. So, but again, you still have to come up with $21 million.
Yep.
And you're going to have to do it at a time where the ARPA funds are gone. Mm-hmm. I'm sure the city would love to give you some commitment. The taxpayers of the city will not want to give a $21 million commitment, especially after the $400+ million commitment that we'll get to in a few minutes anyway. But you mentioned there's private money already coming in.
Yeah.
What's the goal? How much private money? You obviously have a plan. How much private money, how much city money, state money, and federal money? What's the breakdown there in your plan?
Based on what we've been able to kind of ascertain, continuing to get state earmarks, continuing to get federal monies, things along those lines. It's a goal, but under the current environment that we're looking at of where money will be spent, we can't rely upon that. We do know that there is an ongoing commitment from the city. If you look at what they've done in the past, they've made commitments of around $2 million out to Cawley Stadium to continue that process. Inevitably, we're going to have to continue a process like that. So if you were looking at commitments that range anywhere from, let's say, $2 to $8 million coming from city, state, federal, we're going to have to raise somewhere between $12 to $15 million in order to make this a reality to the vision that we all have laid out.
Who would maintain it? Who would run it? And who would ultimately handle the finances? Does this all fall under the city, or will it be kind of like a model like the Lowell Auditorium was under the Three Amigos and currently with our friends at Spectacle Live?
Yeah, good. It's an open discussion of where we would end up. I can tell you the large donors that have had conversations with us have all said in the end they'd like some form of private maintenance or dedicated maintenance that would be done out there.
They've learned.
They've learned over the years, and that's not to the that is not to besmirch anybody that's working inside parks or DPW or anything along those lines. We have almost 90 parks and open spaces in the city of Lowell. That's 68 acres for 2 people. It's really unrealistic if we're going to upgrade it to what we're talking about, to expect them to have the expertise on everything from HVAC to sod management to, track repairs to you name it. That's not realistic. And so as we're going through, the intent is to work through the city to have some kind of a hybrid environment. Final discussion has absolutely not had until we're in a position where we know we're breaking ground on things. But something similar to what they do at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, where you have a private contractor who's being held accountable to be able to take care of that stuff. But we don't want to do it to the detriment of the Parks Department. And so we have to work with them to see what's the situation that works best for them as they're moving forward.
Is there a revenue generating component of this? There can be, but it might take away from the city/school use of it, right? So there's a fine balance there. But you mentioned being able to host state track meets and other track meets. That's a potential revenue generator. I remember I used to host high school football games. I used to broadcast from there. I don't know if they do that anymore at Cawley Stadium. I don't believe they have
done Super Bowl
since they've switched to the new stupid format of 12-week playoff, whatever the hell it is.
It's true.
But if there's a revenue generator there, obviously that factors into the financial equation as well, right?
There's no doubt. There's also the Janus Rink that's just sitting there. That's a state-owned property that the state would give to us in 5 seconds if somebody wanted to take it and run with it. And so there's revenue generation and opportunity there. There's walking trails, biking trails, other things along those lines that have been laid out and designed that would give grant money and other aspects to get to that.
For the full public to use. I know that's a big part of the disease. People can come out there from the neighborhood or neighborhoods and, instead of going to the Freeman Trail, go to the trails out there and see some nice houses.
It is a big goal, as long as the high school kids aren't driving by.
As long as when they're with mom and dad, they're good.
But It's a big goal of everybody involved in all of this to try to take down as many fences and make it as open as possible. But we also have to be realistic. When you start opening up gates, when you start taking down fences, you invite some of the dirt bike idiots and some of the other ATVs and other things. And we can't go out and spend $1 million on turf to have someone doing wheelies on it in the middle of. And so there's a balance. But we definitely want to open that place up. It really is unfortunate the current way that you have to kind of cage it off. And it gives a feel to people who come to Lowell. It gives a feel that we don't even trust ourselves with our nice sections and then our nice things. And so that has to be rectified as part of the process.
So how far away is this ultimate goal in your mind? If everything goes as you hope it does, when is it start? When is it done?
Yeah, our intention through a combination of private fundraising, exploring CPC funds, which I know, this is an opportunity.
Might as well put it towards open space instead of housing.
You're hitting my pet peeve of one of the other hats that I wear. I am on the CPC committee.
Are you really?
I am. I sit the chairman backing and
you got to give more to Parks and Recreation. It was sold to people as community preservation, not building 200 housing units.
Yeah, and so Giovanni Baez-Rose, who does a great job for the city, who's on that committee with me, gave me a nice conversation about how much money that had been spent in ARPA, and she's right. We put a lot of our ARPA money towards open space. And so the idea was, let's make sure we're balancing all the needs we have of the city with what we do. Well, I think we've done that, and I think we're moving into a phase now over these next few years where there's about $400,000 set aside currently for just open space because you have to keep 10%.
That's right. Yeah, the manager did explain that to me, which was nice to know. But I mean, would that be part of the Cawley Stadium funding formula?
It can be. What happens is all of the open space in the city, or the vast majority of open space in the city, is city owned. So it's actually the city that has to put forth the request from the private or the unelected board, appointed board, I should say, which we all have our takes on unelected boards here. But I'm sitting on one of them. It then is up to us to evaluate. And so the city has to put it forward. And so it would be a combination of looking at the budget process of what's realistic through the budget process and what would be realistic through the CPC. I know Councilor Noon had raised the idea of potentially increasing the funding. And as a taxpayer, I don't love the idea of increasing anything for my taxes. But if we were to put something forward that were dedicated, that were to pay down some kind of borrowing that we've done for something that is for all of the residents of Lowell, like 68 acres, well, now we might have something. Now we might have something to have a conversation about that I know I could support.
If you can find a way to make sure it's earmarked there and not going into some private developer who's building more housing.
Yes.
In case you don't know where I stand. So you said you've been at this for 4 years. When is the ribbon cutting if your plan goes to...
Getting back to where you were, yeah. So the intent is when we get to this August, September, when we've got the training center done, if the full pivot becomes to the grandstands. Design process has already begun, so we've already put ourselves in a position to know exactly what it is we're asking for. So I'd say within the next 6 months, you're going to see probably marketing materials, documents, things like that, showing what we're trying to do. We'll probably spend 12 to 18 months trying to raise money, unless any of the well-heeled individuals in Lowell want to give me a call now. I'll give my number out.
Let's go. Let's do it.
I think we have to get at least halfway to that before we could break ground and try to figure the numbers out. But I know the manager and the administration are completely committed to making this happen. The mayor as well, all of the councilors.
You've got him for 5 more years.
Yeah, we do now.
He gets driven out, so that will help. Will he see the end of it before he needs another extension?
I can't see how we would. I'll be honest, having gone through this now at the 4 years of where we've gotten to and learned how the different levers that we have to pull to get to access capital and do those types of things, I think you're realistically looking at 3 to 4 years from now being able to see this as
2028, 2029, we will see we'll have a ribbon cutting at the brand new Cawley Stadium if all goes according to plan.
If everybody involved is dedicated as they have been to this point, and if everybody stays committed to committing to excellence in this city and holding ourselves to a higher standard, we're going to get there.
Word of advice before you start the construction and get the people to come in and give you the bids, make sure they do more than one boring.
Sure. Yeah, it would make sense. I don't think there's any canals running right through where that would be that we have to worry about.
I'm told there's wetlands under there.
There's definitely Article 97. We know that.
Which probably the governor wants to bypass to get some windmills. So anyway, let's transition, because this facility sounds great. It sounds like a dream. It would have been an even better dream had it been attached to a high school and done as part of it. Might already be done, for lack of a better term. 2017, you were a Lowell City Council candidate, as we mentioned, the first victim of the Panos bump. Your main thrust of your campaign was you wanted to move that high school out there. As we sit here 8 years later, knowing what we know now, do you feel like your judgment at the time, your choice, has been vindicated?
I do, and I don't say that with any malice to the people that had a separate opinion as I did. I do believe there are a lot of people who were committed to the ideas that were being proposed about keeping everybody in a central environment. And I do believe there were people that believed that. But I also know, having now spent the last 8 years since then around so many people through youth sports and other endeavors here in the city, that a lot of people feel misled. A lot of people feel that all the information wasn't properly given to them at the time. And I know that may not change their opinion on where the high school should have been. But I do know some people definitely say, I wish I knew all of what we now know. Now, for some of us, we will say, just go back and look at the tapes. We were trying to say it.
I told you so.
Yeah. I mean, that phrase in particular might get me in trouble, but I can't tell you that I disagree that there was definitely things. And I've heard people that have had conversations about, well, we would have run into different problems out at Cawley. We would have had different, of course. There would have been things that would have been different. Those would have been unforeseens. These were foreseen. These are a lot of these things that everybody who's done any construction work will tell you. When you're doing a rehab of an older structure, you're going to run into a lot more costs than you go the other direction.
You want to come in here next Wednesday with Bill Samaras?
Bill and I get along well.
I do too. I keep trying to get him. My hope is that one of these weeks I get him to say, well.
Listen, I will tell you, and again, this might get down a path that gets me in trouble, but if we are in a situation as a taxpayer, as someone who truly cares about seeing Lowell get to a higher level, get to that next level where I hope, and I know so many people in the city hope we get to, if we are not able to get additional money from MSBA, it is time to depose some people and have some conversations about.
I'd love to do some freedom of information to see what emails were going back and forth from the treasurer's office in the summer of 2017, when the MSBA was put there to stop this from happening, and I feel like they enabled it.
Yeah, I mean, the process isn't working. If you look at what's happening around the state, it's not. The MSBA and all their rules came because Newton North decided to build a $20-something million pool to go along with their. Yes. Are we getting any better? Again, I'm in the process right now through the Cawley project, and we're very fortunate. The individuals or the group that's doing as the owner project manager have been great to work with. They're great people. But in the end, are we truly saving money by structuring it the way we're doing it? Or are we just taking money that would have been cost savings over here and giving it to an owner project manager who then is funneling? I don't see us saving any money or time in the current process. I can't claim to have done it long enough or know enough exactly what the fixes are, but I definitely have some suggestions, because I can tell you it's not working at Lowell High School, and it delays the process in everything you do when you try to go public bid. It's very, very difficult.
100%. All right, I'm going to ask you to put on the final hat for the day, your economic development hat. For folks who don't know, besides being a failed city council candidate, you're a very successful businessman. On a number of different fronts. I discovered a few of them myself just a couple of years ago that I didn't even know, but there's a lot of layers to that onion. That's your sweet spot, economic development. A couple of weeks ago, the Lowell Plan LDFC Executive Director position became open. Well, it's not open yet, but it will be when Allison Lamy is gone in a couple of weeks to go join DCAM. You strike me as somebody who would be perfect to head that organization, which was vital to LeLacheur Park, right? Which I bet you take a ton of pride in, or used to, driving by it, until UMass Lowell, fixes it. Maybe not so much anymore, but the Tsongas Center, the hotel in downtown Lowell turned emergency. But the Lowell Plan LDFC had some oomph in the city. And when it decided to get done in partnership with city leaders, Paul Tsongas, we were fortunate enough to have a U.S. senator who had a certain clout, it got things done. I feel it's not getting as much done anymore, and the world has changed. And it could be possible that there's so many different factors now that maybe there isn't a place for the Lowell plan. But it strikes me that somebody with a business development background, as opposed to more, it's not Trigger 'em Tuesday, but I'm gonna say it, without as much of a non-governmental organization background, should be sitting on that board or helming that organization or whatever. And I know Allison had an economic development background, but I look at that board and I'm like, man, there's a lot of NGO here and not enough CFO.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely touching a nerve for me as well. I mean, I think when it comes to it, very flattering for you to think of me in that position. I will not be putting my name in for that.
You're not going to apply. What if they reach out to you? What if the LDFC and Lowell plan reaches out to you? What if they're watching this, and I know some of them do, and says, you know what, Matt LeLacheur is the perfect kind of energy guy that we could use?
I would be very interested in helping in any way that I possibly could.
Ooh, the door's open.
But, as the executive director, I don't think that's probably my path, but I would love to be involved in trying to help out, the Lowell plan. And I know some individuals that are currently involved. I know Allison, who's a wonderful person, and I wish her nothing but the best moving on to, her future endeavors. Because that organization, as you reference, and it's the secondary piece of it, the LDFC, the Lowell Development Financial Corporation. That's actually
where the money is. Yeah,
that's the jewel. There's a bank charter. That's the ability for the manager has been in here so many times, and other individuals have come in and talked about financing and interest rates and being able to access acquisition money and developers. Well, that's where we've got to get it right. And I know it's been looked at, and I know there's been other attempts to try to do that with people. But I do believe that's where we can harness our focus and work in conjunction with the city, because that's how River Crossing came to be. That's how what used to be the old Julian Steel, the old, housing projects on Gorham Street were all redeveloped. Well, that's a Lowell plan endeavor. Now it's the Lowell plan who went down that path. So we've seen it, we've done it, and it's definitely an opportunity for us to do it, because you mentioned the reference. I think it's okay for us to be honest about where we are. We backfilled in this city over the last 20 to 25 years with a lot of nonprofit money and a lot of nonprofit institutions who got up every day trying to do right. I don't question anybody's intent, but we've put ourselves in a position now. We have government money, grant funding, things like that determine too much of our economy. Too much of what's happening in downtown Lowell and across the city is determined on what's flowing from Washington or Boston or private foundations. We need to decide to claw that back. We need to make a commitment. And some of it might add to some pain. You may have to see different tax changes in the different way we structure things in order to invest and get the engine pumped so that we can bring in that. But we've seen it so many different places across this country. Once you pump that engine, when you have something like UMass Lowell, when you have Link, when you have the front runner city, if we pump the engine over the next couple of years, I really believe we can go places we are having a hard time contemplating for a lot of people.
It's interesting. You mentioned Link. You mentioned Link, but also front runner city as part of a discussion we were having about the LDFC and the Lowell plan. I never even, I looked at the way I understand front runner city. I'm like, is there even a role for the LDFC there? You see one.
I do.
Which makes my ears perk up.
I do. And again, charters and things like that, not being inside the room, I can't tell you exactly how it all plays out, but I can tell you the vision would be the manager makes reference to the interest rates, what we have for interest rates right now for some of these projects. And hey, if it was down 1 point or if it was down a half a point or something, we really could get things going. Well, what if we subsidized? What if through the LDFC we were to move into a second lien position or give low interest acquisition money, which some of these programs exist, but what if we could supercharge these things that would then say, okay, we're going to show as a private entity, which is what the Lowell plan is, but working in conjunction with the city with tips and ties and other things like that, we're going to show the level of commitment that would have some major developers from around the country and potentially around the world now with Front Runner City. that we are committed to that higher standard I keep referencing. We are going to show it. Our money is going to be where our mouth is, and we're going to put up some of that to make this happen.
All right, my wheels are spinning now. My understanding of Front Runner City is it's funded by the World Bank. So money is coming in at ridiculously low interest rates, even lower than the LDFC and Lowell plan could offer. But I'm going to guess some type of mechanism needs to be set up once that international money starts coming in. Are you saying that with the Lowell plan, we may not even need to reinvent that wheel? Maybe we already have that wheel, and rather than setting up another, dare I say, level of bureaucracy, that maybe that's where the marriage is. So, so the LDFC can even loan money at a much lower rate, and most of that money is now coming from the World Bank as opposed to the banks that make up, the LDFC banking charter.
Even act as the conduit, as the administrator, as the guard on duty for the money that's flowing in. Can that act? Never mind the fact that the Lowell plan and the LDFC, they have the local banks are the ones that are part of it. So now how is that money flowing from the World Bank through the local banks, not Bank of America, not some of the others? And so we're doubling, tripling the velocity of that money here in the community by flowing it that way. And that's, I think, something that needs to be explored. I'm sure there are roadblocks. There are always roadblocks.
Sure.
But this manager, this administration, and many people of my generation in the city are ready to say, okay, let's get to yes. Let's find our way to get through those things.
Let's get to yes. I've heard that from from somebody.
I may have stolen that from the manager.
I think going back to the state rep day. So you sure there's not a political run in your future? I'm just listening to you, and I'm reminded why I cursed you with the Panos.
Go ahead, bump me again, so I'll never do it, Teddy. It sounds perfect.
But I mean, this is the kind of vision stuff that I think is sorely lacking.
Yeah. Well, I do think it's there. I think what's happened in far too many instances is it's almost like we've just come to accept that things are how they are, or for too long. We did. And I'm not going to tell you that everything I just laid out is going to happen. But if you can reach for those types of things, and something we probably won't hit on today, but maybe if there's another opportunity in the public school system, there's an opportunity to have this type of culture. I saw what you were discussing with Superintendent Skinner and the culture of continuous improvement. And it is a culture. It is a decision that we are going to hold ourselves to a different standard. And so I believe there's plenty of other people that are out there. I'm happy to, right now, I'm thoroughly enjoying running youth sports and being there with my kids, trying to be the husband and father that my wife holds me the standard to, the high standard that I have to do, and like all of us. So no, I don't see any kind of political future, but being active and engaged and involved, I don't see myself going anywhere.
So you won't apply for the Lowell Plan executive director?
No, not my intention.
What if they ask you?
Well, I will always listen to everybody in this city because I'm committed to it. But I'm happy to lend my efforts anywhere that
you'd
that
serve on the board.
I would be interested in listening.
Me trying to help you in that, or place you in that regard is probably going to eliminate any possibility of it happening.
I'm out.
But it would be a smart idea. All right. I'm not going to get into the Lowell Public Schools because I'm going to use that to entice you back for another discussion.
Sounds good.
Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. You said yes.
I'll be here.
Go back on it. Matt LeLacheur, as always, thank you for coming in. A lot of good stuff there. Appreciate the work you're doing. And good luck out there at that Cawley Stadium thing. Whatever happened in 2017, let's get the best possible high school in downtown, even if it costs $400+ million, which it will, trust me. And then let's get world-class facilities for our kids who can then enjoy them and be able to compete. And maybe we won't lose so many kids to Central Catholic or other places as well.
If the vision is for the kids, what happened in the past doesn't matter anymore. We get it done. We do what's best for the kids, and we move on.
All right. Appreciate all your efforts on that behalf. Thank you, Matt LeLacheur. Thank you for tuning in as well. Fascinating discussion. Maybe next time Matt comes in, I'll bring him in with Liam Skinner or with Tom Golden, even better. But I'm not kidding, by the way, about him leading the Lowell. He did not say that. That was mine. I threw that out there. But the more I listen to him, I really do think it's a pretty good idea. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Tomorrow, Leslie Boder will join us on the Daily Pulse. We'll have a little fun on Big Fun Friday. Next week, we've already lined up a special Karen Reed trial show with Leslie and Ray Booten. Booten and Boder battling over Karen Reed. We'll talk to her. Bill Samaras will be here. Well, next Friday, by the way, we're going to give away some horses that will give you a chance to win some great prizes as part of our Kentucky Derby contest. That's right. I'm stealing. That was my baby anyway. I'm bringing it from radio to Inside Lowell, a Kentucky Derby horse giveaway with Kiki Rudy, John Dakota, and Leslie Boder will do the actual drawing. You're going to actually get to see, you heard it on radio for all those years. Now you're going to get to see those giant hands of hers going into the jar and picking out the horse and the people who are associated with that horse. So follow Inside Lowell, find out how you can enter Inside Lowell. As we like to say, if Lowell is your home, this is your place. Till next time, stay safe, enjoy this beautiful spring day, and catch you on the other side.